All right. So those, of course, are the latest reports coming in from Telangana. In fact, in just a moment, we'll be joined by my colleague Uma Sudhir, who is reporting live from the Secunderabad railway station. Remember, one person has died in that violence, and there were 3 trains that were burnt. Uma is now live with us. Uma, what's happening where you are?
Nearly 10 hours that Secunderabad railway station literally has been held hostage by these protesters, and big numbers of the rapid action force, the police force as well as the railway force being deployed here. In the early hours, we saw that the protesters had outnumbered the security forces, and now the security forces have in fact outnumbered the protesters, and slowly they have all been moved, each one escorted away by the security personnel and put into vans there. We still have some squatters on the railway track itself, and behind those you can see all those trains that were in fact damaged. Lot of violence that has happened here, but yes, I must also point out that these protesters, while they did attack and burn the Ajanta Express, the Shalimar Express as well as the Rajkot Express, none of the passengers actually suffered any injury, which does indicate that they wanted to catch attention but perhaps did not want a situation where the public were harmed in any way. So while the eyewitness from the railway staff also was telling us that it was very, very terrorizing to see huge numbers of people come in with cans that were filled with inflammable material, perhaps some kind of a chemical that was other than petrol also, which could have led to that kind of a burning of the bogies that we have seen. While that was very terrorizing, it is a little reassuring that no passenger was actually injured in that action that happened. So right now, a large majority of the people, protesters who were on the tracks for so many hours, suspending all traffic here, all of them have in fact been moved away, and you can see they are all in rioting gear, ready with their with the kind of gear that you would be using if there was going to be action, and therefore they are certainly on standby. We already saw about 100 of them being moved away. There are more who are sitting there, and we can in very short time expect a lot of quick action. What you were pointing out, the person who died this morning, a 19-year-old called Rakesh, in fact, who is from Warangal district, and he was someone who was among the protesters, and when the security forces were clearly outnumbered this morning, that's when they opened fire, and he was killed in that particular firing. The protesters had been demanding that unless an exam date is announced and they are reassured that there will be exams, they said they are not going to move from here. And all day long, the security forces, I must say, tried to out-tire them, tried to hold negotiations with them, tell them that they can go and hold talks with the army recruitment officer here, and he could perhaps give them some assurances. But clearly, this was not something that was on which an army recruitment officer sitting in Secunderabad perhaps would be able to take a decision, because these are issues on which the central government, Mr. Rajnath Singh and the leaders at the center would have to take a call, and therefore it was all about de-escalating the tension, because already 75 trains had been cancelled on these tracks. Secunderabad happens to be one of the 3 important stations in Hyderabad. We have Kachiguda, we have Hyderabad, and we have Secunderabad, and at least 75 trains had to be cancelled. Lots of commuters in fact suffered hugely, because they are not able to know where to go and how to travel, because many trains were also diverted, and getting that information about where to go to be able to travel, holding a ticket in hand for a train that did not come, that did cause a lot of confusion. But from what the indications are, I have been speaking to some senior police officers who suggested that this is something that was a venting of frustration by the youth, and that we have seen those WhatsApp messages as well, where these youth were sharing with each other, and they had organized themselves to say that they should come together at the Secunderabad station. But the intelligence agencies will certainly have to answer this question about how they allowed an estimated 2,000 people to come in, and many of them seem to have been armed with cans which had petrol and which had lathis, and which also had they were also carrying stones, and there was a lot of stone pelting that happened this morning. So that is something that the intelligence agencies will have to answer. People are saying that yes, they brought them in backpacks, and when people come to a railway station, very difficult to monitor that. But what happened to the intelligence network, which should have been able to detect people coming in such large numbers when already there is trouble in other parts of the country? That's something that's important. But right now, the station authorities, the railway police, as well as the security forces, all of them very keen that normalcy should be restored at the Secunderabad railway station, and that's why all of them are going to be moved away, forcibly moved away from here. We already saw about 100 and 150 of them being taken away, and we expect that the vehicles will be coming back and more numbers are going to be taken away from the Secunderabad railway station. Whether the concerns of these youth are addressed, that is of course another question altogether, because some of the youth that I spoke to said, we have been protesting for so many months peacefully and we were 11 times the exams got postponed, and this time we feel that we are losing hope, and that's why we resorted to this kind of an action. Back to you, Rishika.
Right, Uma, we're also getting live pictures at the moment from what I am told is a railway station close to Hyderabad, and we can see there is a large sort of contingent of security deployment there, and you can actually see the police picking up protesters, and some being dragged and some being carried over the railway tracks, and they are being taken away. Through the course of the last 2 days, as these protests have raged, Uma, we've predominantly seen the protests concentrated, in parts of Bihar, in Haryana, in Uttar Pradesh, in Delhi. The protest really has sort of spiraled in Telangana, and this has happened essentially only today. Now, the BJP is alleging that this is a politically motivated protest. The Agriculture Minister has said it in so many words. What sort of triggered these protests in Telangana today? How did it all start?
I've been speaking to many of these youth who have been protesting, and all of them deny any political hand at all. They say we don't want to have to do with any political parties, and they are denying that any political party has backed them, has helped them organize themselves and come and attack a very important railway station, which is the Secunderabad railway station. If you pan, in fact, Nagaraj can just show you the board, and there are security personnel there as well, attacking such a huge railway station in such an organized manner. 3 important trains at 9:50 in the morning. That's something that these protesters managed to do, and therefore, anyone would think that yes, they would have had some kind of an conspiracy in order to do this. From whatever I have gathered from the protesters, it does not appear to be so. But you are right. Not just the Union Agriculture Minister, Kishan Reddy, who is a Union Minister from, in fact, Secunderabad itself, he as well as the State BJP President, Mr. Bandi Sanjay, have also hinted that the TRS has allowed this to happen, and that they have a political motive in letting this happen, and that they did not crack down on this. That is a question that the TRS will have to also answer, about how so many protesters did manage to come here. But on the other hand, the TRS is talking about the fact that the central government, of course, the TRS has been critical of BJP and the Prime Minister himself. They are saying that the central government was not able to understand the pulse or the emotions of the farmers in Delhi, and they are not able to understand the pulse and emotions of the youth, and in this case, youth who in fact wanted to join the army here as well. So the politics being played out there. Some people asking the question about whether the police forces could not have in fact used force to move these youth much earlier than what is happening right now. But I did speak to some senior police officers who said, yes, there was the domain of the railway police, there's the rapid action force and the city police, the Telangana police itself. And in fact, the firing also, the Telangana police has said that it is not they who carried out that firing that happened this morning that took the life of a 19-year-old, but that it was the railway police. Clearly at that time, there were already 3 trains that were burning, and there was a lot of damage that happened, not just on the platform but on the trains themselves. I mean, we can in fact walk across and show you that bogie which is completely burned. This of course is the cargo, the luggage portion, where you can see the fish cargo, all of them still smelling of the burn that has happened here. And this was a train that was supposed to leave at 9:50 in the morning. There were passengers, thankfully none of them got injured. But if you see the extent of damage here, at that time obviously the security forces were outnumbered, and they would have perhaps thought that to be able to bring the situation under control, that's when the lathi charge happened and the firing as well. A railway station is a place where you have huge numbers of people. Public have also gathered, and very clearly the police would have had to exercise a lot of caution, a lot of precaution before they go in for any kind of a firing. But yes, the firing did happen. Things looked pretty bad at that time, and that did result in the death of a 19-year-old boy. Back to you.
Right. Uma, in fact, those pictures, that we saw just moments ago that ANI is sending us is also from the Secunderabad railway station where you are. So I'm told that's happening not very far from you. In fact, in one of those clips that ANI sent us, our producer
No,
actually
Rishika, that happened
you.
about 10 minutes ago.
Yes.
Those were not live visuals. Those were happening about 10 minutes ago. That's when the first contingent, as I told you, of the protesters was moved. Right now, everything is looking calm because they are going to bring back the vehicles and take away more of those protesters is what we understand. So yes, in Telangana, it is only Secunderabad that has been affected by this kind of a protest activity. And it is only here that the trains have not been running for the last 9 hours now, I must say. And this is where the commuters are suffering as well. And this is where now a deployment of nearly 4,000 security personnel is what is the estimate that's being given of people who were have been deployed now in order to move the protesters away, because the railway authorities clearly very perturbed and disturbed that trains have not been running for a long time, and obviously commuters are going to suffer the worst because of the kind of confusion that cancellation of trains, diversion of trains, partial cancellation and diversion of the routes is going to lead to. So this is exactly where that action in fact happened, what you're referring to, the visuals on the ANI that is there. And right now it is just peaceful. It is perhaps the calm before the storm.
Right. So essentially what you're reporting is that just about moments before we actually came live to you, Uma, there were protesters who were physically being dragged, and we can actually see you in some of those pictures that ANI sent us. Those are, like Uma's explaining, pictures from about 15 minutes ago now, where protesters were physically being dragged. And there are, like Uma said, vehicles that are on standby. So protesters are going to be picked up and of course taken into police custody. And that's how the police is cracking down on the protesters and clearing the blockades that have been created. So dramatic scenes there at the Secunderabad railway station. The story is not over. 3 trains were torched, and like Uma is saying, there are thousands of security personnel who have been deployed, because the idea is that normalcy needs to be restored, those paths need to be cleared so train movement can resume, but it's looking like it's going to be a while before that actually happens. Uma, we're going to keep coming back to you for more updates.